Can you believe that I've got the Super Bowl trophy, the first trophy of the Dallas Cowboys?
Roger pulls up, touchdown!
This was the first big championship the Dallas Cowboys have won. It meant so much for the city of Dallas, put us as America's team. And tonight I'm going to put this trophy down in front of all my teammates up there, and what a great honor this is to be able to bring this trophy in.
This will be an evening of stories and storytelling, memories that created the foundation for America's team. And oh my, the stories they will tell. Willie Nelson wrote,
"Mamas, don't let your babies grow up to be cowboys."
I don't believe he was referring to the following men. He is a Hall of Famer and a member of the All-NFL team for the 60s and the 70s, but he's better known as Mr. Cowboy, Bob Lilly. A three-time All-Pro and a member of the 1970s All-Decade team. Welcome to Mr. Clutch. That's Drew Pearson. Another Hall of Famer and a Super Bowl most valuable player. He is the Manster, Randy White. One of just two men to win Super Bowl championships as a player, an assistant coach, and a head coach. Welcome, Iron Mike Ditka. Enshrined in the Pro Football and College Football Halls of Fame, he owns an NCAA National Championship and a Super Bowl championship ring, along with a Heisman Trophy. Welcome, TD, Tony Dorsett. And last but not least, another Hall of Fame Heisman Trophy winning Super Bowl MVP who's a member of the 1970s All-Decade team, better known as Captain America, Roger Staubach. Here now your hosts, Lesley Visser and Spencer Tillman.
This will be an evening for the ages as memories come alive from the AT&T Performing Arts Center in downtown Dallas. We present some of the greatest names sharing some of the greatest stories in cowboy history.
This evening is not about asking and answering questions. It's about storytelling. So, for the most part, Lesley and I promise to stay out of your way.
The Cowboys are the most storied franchise in the NFL, and it starts with championship games, the successes, the failures, the titanic battles.
From the mid-60s through the end of the 70s, they were a part of a group that became and remain today America's team. At this point, we turn it over to the men who made the memories.
With 7 title appearances, let's start at the beginning and one of the most memorable games in NFL history, 1967, the famed Ice Bowl. Bob Lilly, how cold was it?
George Andrew, my roommate, talked me into going out without a warm-up jacket on, and it was 29 degrees below zero chill factor. And I went out and I thought to myself, you know, Bob, you've never played in weather like this. How did you let George talk you into it? So I ran back in the locker room and I changed clothes, and then I came back out. By that time, we had all started forming icicles on our noses. And the Green Bay trainer came out and he said, when you guys go in, thaw those out, because otherwise you'll pull the membranes out of your nose. And when we were out on defense, we were out on defense first, and the first play of the game, the referee blew the whistle. This was before they had the plastic on the whistle. Pulled part of his lip off, and blood was running down his cheek, or his chin, and the referees called timeout, and they brought out some Vaseline. They told us to keep Vaseline in our nose, on our lips, and all that. So that's how cold it was. I thought when George Andre kept telling me how this wasn't cold at all up north, that, you know, it wasn't, but it almost froze us to death. And Jim Taylor did a great job of pushing Bart Starr over the goal line, which was illegal, but they scored anyway. So we got beat, and we did not like it, but it was, you know what, it was kind of bittersweet because we got on the airplane, we got up out of there, and we were thankful to be alive. And, you know, we started over again the next year.
I want to talk about the one we beat the Dolphins. And I tell you why. Because that was Coach Landry's first Super Bowl win, and that game meant more to me and these guys than it did the one I won in Chicago, believe me, because it got rid of all the doubters everywhere across the country that the Cowboys couldn't win the big one. But we did win the big one. And if you people want to know something, that was the last game Miami lost before they went on their undefeated streak. So we were and we didn't beat them, we handled them pretty well. That's right.
Roger, you had all kinds of people to throw to in your Super Bowls. Why'd you throw to Mike Ditka?
Well, I was open. They didn't worry about covering me.
I didn't throw enough to him in the 71 Super Bowl because the first drive we had, we drive down, we have this play action pass where Dwayne Thomas was on a swing pass and Mike ran a corner. And I faked and was supposed to look at Mike right away, but, you know, it was the start of the game. We drove down the field, and so I just threw the ball out to Dwayne. Mike is wide open, so he is just literally chewing me out for not throwing the ball to. We did kick a field goal. We're coming off the field, and literally he's just, he's just yelling at me, screaming at me, and Mike is actually mellowed through the years. I think he started mellowing when he started doing those Levitra ads or something. Yeah.
But one for the old quarterback.
What happened in that game, though, is that they really couldn't figure out an MVP because Dwayne Thomas wouldn't talk to anybody. But Mike, first of all, I should have thrown. He would have caught the first touchdown pass. Later on in the game, we run an end-around reverse. He gets knocked out of bounds on the 1-yard line, so he came close to scoring. And then finally, we did hit a touchdown pass. So he would have had 3 touchdowns. So this day, in fact, today, and Mike was over to our house today, first thing he said, at Staubach, I should have been the MVP in Super Bowl. And he really should have been, really, actually.
And you don't even know how much I don't mean that. I was just teasing him.
Yeah.
Can some of you guys talk a little bit about Super Bowl X and what your memories are?
My recollection of that game was Thomas Henderson was going out with one of the Pointer Sisters, and he took us down to Joe Namath's Bachelor 3 Club, and we got to meet the Pointer Sisters. And I was sitting there, and Joe Namath came up and sat right next to me at the bar, and I thought that was the neatest thing in the world. And, you know, we played the game. It didn't have a very good outcome. And after the game, the buses were all full, so Burton Lawless, a teammate of mine, they told us to ride in the police escort car. So we went up to the police escort car, and there's a guy sitting in the back with long hair and a beard. I told Burton, I said, Burton, you sit back there with that guy. And I just got in the front seat. I never looked back. We were driving down the road. This guy taps me on the shoulder. He goes, hey, Randy. He says, I'm Willie Nelson. I'm a big fan of yours. So anyway, we got to the party for Super Bowl. Super Bowl parties when you lose are not very fun, and this was a typical one, and everybody was kind of just moping around, and they had a humdrum band going on, and then we had Willie Nelson, Jimmy Buffett, Jerry Jeff Walker, And Larry Cole will remember this one because Larry Cole was dancing with a rose or some kind of flower in his head, and I tell you. And Bob Brunick and I got to get up on stage and sing with Willie, Redneck Mother. And so that was my recollection of Super Bowl 10. Now,
you know, when I got here, all I was trying to do, like they say, you get in where you fit in. And fortunately for me, you know, I got the opportunity to become a starter sometime, I think around the 10th or 12th game of the season. And had the great experience of going to New Orleans, back down to New Orleans to play for a world championship just a year after we had won a national championship with the University of Pittsburgh. So I was on one heck of a ride. It was somewhat, I guess, kind of set me up because, you know, once you're up so high, the only way there is to go is down.
You've done pretty well. You know, right here, right now, Tony, on this stage, I've always wanted to ask you this. Who is the most famous person from Aliquippa, Pennsylvania?
There's a tie. You got Mike Ditka, you got Henry Mancini, you got Pistol Pete Maravich, and Tony Dorsett.
Tony Dorsett.
How would you rank them, Mike?
Wow. I've never seen Henry Mancini run with a football. And I ran with it, and I couldn't run with one. And Pistol Pete, all he could do was shoot it. This guy could run with a football as well as anybody ever played the game.
Between 1966 and 1978, the Cowboys played in 7 championship games. During that period, we called Johnson, Nixon, Ford, and Carter Mr. President. In '66, Herb Alpert and the Tijuana Brass had the record of the year, Taste of Honey. And in '78, A Taste of Honey was singing Boogie Oogie Oogie. We'll be back.
They came from near and far, from the next town over, as Bob Lilly did from Fort Worth, to the world traveler, Navy grad, and Heisman Trophy winner, Roger Staubach. But they had something in common. They indeed grew up to be Cowboys.
A big reason I signed with the Cowboys as a free agent is because they had a history of free agents making a team. And when you got a guy like Cliff Harris and you see the limited ability he had, and you see that he was able to have success, I said, well, if he can do it, I can do it too. So I ended up signing with the Cowboys as a free agent for $14,500. It was the base salary. My signing bonus was $150. So I didn't hold out for $15 grand or $200 signing bonus. Bob Griffin was the scout, and he was at the Camelot Hotel. And it was 11 p.m. at night, the second day of the draft, and he called me and asked me, first of all, he said, I can't believe you didn't draft it. You know, we think you're good enough to play in the NFL, and we want to sign you as a free agent. Could you come down here and visit with us and sign this contract? And I said, look here, Bob, if you pay me that signing bonus in cash, I'll sign right now. And of course, they didn't have ATM, so he was prepared for me to agree to this. And he went in his pocket and gave me 7 20s and a 10, and that's how I got my signing bonus with the Cowboys. But here's the best part, Spencer. Yeah. Of course, I was married at the time, and I told my ex-wife that we got $75, and of course, the rest is history.
I was in the Navy, and I was drafted by Dallas and Kansas City, so the Navy allowed me to sign a contract that if I ever was able to play professional football, I could accept the, I could leave after my obligation. And so I signed with the Dallas Cowboys. They gave me $500 a month for doing that, which was, Navy was my ensign pay, then it was $47.88 for subsistence and housing, so that was more than my pay in the service. And then if I left the service and joined the team, and then by that time we had 3 kids, my salary was $25,000. And so that's why I went to work in the real estate business in the office.
And did quite well.
I worked in the off-season. It's kind of a godsend, actually. Mary Ann thought I was trying to get away from the 3 kids, but I worked in the off-season because I was trying to. But I got to the practice field every day. I worked for the Henry Miller Company in the off-season because I needed a few extra bucks.
With me is a man who was an integral part of those early days with the Cowboys, 1/3 of the Cowboy Brain Trust, along with Tex Schramm and Tom Landry. The great Gil Brandt. Gil, welcome.
Thank you, Leslie. It's a pleasure to be here.
There was a lot of debate about the Bob Lilly pick. How was that perceived at the time?
Well, it was a debate between Holub and Lilly, and what took place is that we felt that Bob was a better player and that a defensive lineman would be better for us. And what happened, I almost lost my job that night when I signed Bob. It was about 12 o'clock at night on El Camino Real in Palo Alto while he was at Stern Hall for the East-West game, and I gave him a $12,000 contract and a $4,000 bonus. And I couldn't wait to call Tex and tell him we had just signed our first choice, and Tex was known to have a few cutty sarks at night before he went to bed. And so what happened is, I told him what happened, and he said, my gosh, he said, you're going to drive us out of business. We cannot pay this kind of money and remain in the business that we're in. And the next time this happens, you'll be an ex-member of the Cowboy organization.
I will tell you this, Gil. I played at TCU. I got $10 a month laundry check. And when I went to the Cowboys and actually got a paycheck, I thought I was stealing. For playing a game that I love. So, figure that one out.
I think back when we played the game, and I don't want to speak for everybody, but the game was a sport. It was a game. He said he would have played for nothing. I know damn well I would have. So when money becomes the sole purpose of what you're doing something for, you can never reach true excellence, in my opinion, because you won't be around long enough. You're always going to go to the next buck.
They may not have earned much in salary, but the memories are priceless, and we'll be right back with more memories right after this.
It all started with an NFL Films description of the Cowboys as America's team. Nicknames were a bond of familiarity and family. That's just what the Cowboys were. Randy White, fair to say your Cowboy family was almost as tough as your real family?
Well, I know what you're trying to get to. You're trying to get to my story about my mother fighting in the stands at the football games. Which, I wasn't there, but I heard the story. I got 2 of them, I'll tell you. I used to worry more about my family going to the away games when we played in Washington, especially in Philadelphia, because those fans were pretty vocal and pretty hostile towards Cowboy fans. And my mother, she's not very big, but she's very vocal. She's 83 years old, and she still goes to work every day, and she carries a blackjack in her pocketbook. I guess my sister was cheering for the Cowboys, and a guy in RFK Stadium dumped a beer on her head. So my brother came over the stands and nailed the guy and knocked him down into the aisle. And my mom took her blackjack out, and they had to drag her off him. She was on top of him, hitting him with the blackjack.
Your brother took care of my dad
For
one
your
time.
dad many times, too.
My
didn't he,
dad was
Drew?
up there all obnoxious and wore all that cowboy stuff and just being really obnoxious. And he got into a scuffle, and I had heard about it in the locker room after the game, and he said, he's all right. Randy White's brother stepped in and took care of him. So I knew he was all right.
Cliff Harris and Charlie Waters were twin brothers of a different mother. They wrote a book together and also wrote one solo. And I've got to ask you right off the top, how in the heck were you not drafted?
Well, I was supposed to have been drafted. Gil Brandt told me to stay by my phone. I'm going to be drafted in the first 6 rounds. The phone call never came. Luckily, he signed me to a 3-year contract, which I thought was really an unbelievable deal, which had an escalating clause, and it started out at $13,500. Gave me a $500 bonus, and I went to training camp and found, they said, well, what do you mean you signed a 3-year contract? Don't you know that everybody here signed a 1-year contract, so you're not going to be able to renegotiate next year? So I signed a 3-year contract.
Leave us with one thought, that the people who had never touched the field, an NFL field, or understand what that experience is like, what it was like to don the Cowboys uniform and be referred to as a member of America's team.
The thrill was really running out onto the field as a Dallas Cowboy and being a part of a great team that won Super Bowls and never wanting the Super Bowl to end.
So many public memories come through the perspectives of others. When Summerall was in the house, you knew it was a big game, and we're proud, and I'm fortunate to be standing beside one of the greats of the broadcasting industry. Pat, it's my pleasure. Thanks for joining us, and as you listen to some of these legends, many games of which you've called over the years, tell us about some of the thoughts that's going through your mind as you listen to them.
I don't know if I have a favorite memory because there are so many. I remember being down on the floor, down on the field at Texas Stadium, and Tex Schramm, who I negotiated my first contract with CBS, he was an executive at CBS then, so I know what these guys have been through negotiating with him. But he said to me, look at that fellow down at the end of the, and there was a young man throwing the ball, dressed in a Cowboy uniform, and I didn't know who it was. He said, if Roger goes down, meaning Roger Staubach, if Roger goes down, do you think he can lead us to victory? And I didn't know who he was. So I quick said goodbye, went upstairs and looked it up in the media guide, and I found out the guy's name was Longley. And I thought, well, I don't know anything about this guy, I better find out something. So Tex, unknown to what was going to happen with Longley coming in and throwing the 2 touchdown passes or whatever to Drew Pearson, and the whole memory, the whole thing comes back to me. And Roger and I were talking about it just a couple of weeks ago. But that's one of the memories. Everybody thought, I think, that I was well prepared and knew all about all the players and all that sort of stuff. But that was a big lie because I didn't know anything about whoever that guy was throwing the ball down there.
The stories, and there are so many, they're legion. This story franchise is one of the best and continues to be. What is it, in your opinion, from a broadcaster standpoint, that makes it what it is, the mystique of the Cowboys?
America's team, I think the uniforms, one thing, starting at the Cotton Bowl, the players, the cast of characters that they've had, the people who have written about the Cowboys. I really don't know what it is. I wish I could put my finger on it, but it is indeed America's team.
Yeah, and you're America's broadcaster, Pat. Thank you so much for sharing time with us.
Thank you.
Lesley Visser.
Roger, you heard Pat talking about Tex Schramm. Can you give us a little bit about what Tex Schramm was like and the impact he had on the NFL?
Well, I think one of the big things, Tex understood his role, and first of all, he gave Tom total control over the football team, and which was, Tom was phenomenal. I mean, off the field, on the field, he was just a great person. And Tex really had great marketing skills, and he truly he saw the vision of the Cowboy cheerleaders, and he was a marketing guy, and that's what he did with the NFL. And I think he had a real impact on the NFL with all the things that he did for the league, in addition to what he did for the Cowboys. And I negotiated my contracts with him, and he was one tough son of a gun. And as Gil knows, Gil didn't even. He sent me in to see Tex, and so I tell a quick story. One day I was going in there, and Tex was on the phone, and I'm waiting. So I said to his assistant, and he was at the corner of the Expressway Towers building, and he had his feet up on the credenza looking out, and if you look north, there was no lattice work, but it was around the building. So I asked the assistant, could I get out on the ledge? And so she said, yeah. So I went out on the ledge, and I came around, and I'm on the corner now, and the ledge was kind of big, but I put my hand around there in case there's any wind coming around there. And so I leaped in front of the window, and literally, it kind of scared me because he just rolled back like this. And so, I didn't have that much, I only had a little room there. It would have been a weird deal if I would have fell. But so it was on the 12th floor. And so when I came back around and went in there, he was still kind of numb. And the people on the phone thought he had a heart attack because he gasped. And he later, when he recovered himself, he told him, he was on a conference call, and he said, oh my God, my quarterback just flashed in front of my eyes. So after that bit of sense of humor, Tex was, I think I was able to deal with him a lot better after that, though. So,
it seemed to have worked out.
He was a great part of the NFL, and what he did for the Cowboys was very special.
Thanks a lot, Lesley and Roger. We'll be right back.
Tom Landry said, the secret to winning is constant, consistent management.
Tom Landry said, today, you have 100% of your life left.
He used to have a sign over the locker room door heading out to the practice field, and it was the quality of a person's life is in direct proportion to his commitment to excellence. And Coach Landry used to say the key word in that phrase was commitment.
I really respected Tom for his coaching ability and also the type of human being that he was. And I hope that, I had his respect also. And we enjoyed our competitions, and we did it on the football field, and we occasionally did it on the golf course. And so I have some great memories from some of those competitions.
Tom Landry, the deadpan face, the jutting jaw, the silhouette of the trademark fedora. He was, of course, the embodiment of the Dallas Cowboys.
Thanks a lot, Lesley. As Will Rogers was fond of saying, that puts me in the mind of a story. Let's ask the panel to give us their favorite Tom Landry story. We'll start out with you, Roger.
Well, I think the fondest I had was, first of all, when he announced that I was going to be the starting quarterback in 1971. His sense of humor was, he had a sense of humor, but you wouldn't see it on the field. So kind of a memory that I always got a kick out of. Because I would kind of kid around, and he put up with my running, and we had a lot of respect for each other. So one time we're out on the practice field. We were putting in a goal line play, and it was a kind of a fake handoff from my formation. Then I would roll around to the right, and so I ran it, and he said, "No, you got to," and he had a bad knee, so he kind of limped when he ran. So he said, "No, let me show you how to do it." So he took the snap from center and kind of faked it to the running backs, and then he kind of limped around. And so he said, "Now, get in there and do it again." And so I got in there and took the snap from center and faked it and limped around. And you know, Jim Myers, everybody's laughing, you know, but Tom really didn't laugh too much at that. So. But there's a lot of great memories. But the best one was when he said, "Roger, you're gonna start the St. Louis Cardinal game." It changed my life.
Well, mine's very simple. He hired me twice when he didn't have to hire me at all. Gave me a job to play, gave me a job to coach, and changed my whole life. I wouldn't be sitting here in front of you people today if that wouldn't have happened. So those two things. But I have to tell you, you know, I was coach special teams, so I was a genius. And so we're playing the Giants, and I've been working on this. I look at all this stuff, and I had those guys. That one year when Randy and Thomas were rookies, there was no special teams in the history of football like these guys. They took no prisoners. So, but I had to deal with something. On the sideline, and I give the signal. I tell the guy we're going, opening the game with an onside kick. Cool, I was cool. So I watch, kicker kicks the ball. Giants recover. So I start walking this way. Now, I'm all the way down to the 20-yard line. I'm walking this way. And he's walking with me. And he never said a word. He just went like this. He said, "If you ever do that again, you'll be looking for another job." And then he walked back. And that was the end of it.
It is a privilege to be joined by Mrs. Landry, Alicia Landry. Alicia, welcome and thank you for coming.
Thank you. Nice to be here. It's a great show.
Thank you. It's, well, your people made it possible. Tell us a little bit about, did you have some connection to having the star on the helmet?
Well, my only claim to fame is that the star on the helmet was my idea. When we were in New York, Tommy and I were up there playing with the Giants, or he was playing. They had the Republican Convention in 1956, and it took place on the floor of a basketball court, and then the TV cameras were up in the stands. General Eisenhower was running that year, and all of the delegates for him, had on these straw hats with a flat brim, and on the brim, it's on the top of the crown, it said, "I like Ike." And it was so impressive and so visible that I thought to myself, gee, the cameras had the same perspective as the fans at a football game. We should have something on our helmets. No one had helmets with anything on them at the time except the Rams, who had a ram horn, but I didn't know it because we didn't play them. So I thought it was really a good idea. So when we came to Dallas, I was visiting with Tommy and Clint one day, and I said that I think that what we should do is put our logo on the helmet, and our logo should be the star, because we are the Lone Star State, and with Tommy coaching, we are going to be stars.
And it was a great idea. Thank you so much for sharing with us. Spencer?
Thanks a lot, Leslie. Randy, how about you? Fondest memory of Coach Landry?
Oh, my fondest memory, the fondest memory I have of him is not a good story, but I'll tell you a funny story first, and then I was scared to death of Coach Landry. I will promise you. I was afraid if he didn't ask me a question, if he didn't look at me, I always wanted to do everything right so I never would get criticized by him. And, you know, when I was a rookie, I was projected to be a middle linebacker. Well, I studied the position. I knew everything the middle linebacker was supposed to do. I knew it in my head. We get in a meeting, and Coach Landry would go, White, what do you do on this? And I just sit there and I grab the side of the desk and I just go. And Bob Brunick knew all the answers, and he'd go, anybody else know? And Bob would, he'd give him the answer. So that's one of the reasons I probably didn't make it at middle linebacker. But the moment I spent with Coach Landry that meant the most to me was my father died the night before we played the Denver Broncos, a year after we beat them in the Super Bowl. And I got introduced before that game. The defense was introduced, and when I shook Coach Landry's hand when I was going out, he had a tear in his eye, and I had some tears in mine. So that moment right there I shared with Coach Landry is one I'll never forget. I mean, he was a guy that he didn't just talk the talk, he walked the walk, and he cared about each and every one of his players. And he was a great example, a great inspiration to me, and to this day, the lessons I learned by being around him for 14 years still help me in my life.
Well, it's kind of like Randy. It's more of a compassionate situation with Coach Landry. In 1984, I had a car accident, lost my brother. I got ripped up bad in the accident and had the end of my career. And while my family was up in New Jersey dealing with the funeral and burying my brother, I'm laying in intensive care trying to fight for my life. And every time I got turned to adjust or take another test or do something, they were doing something to me, I would always see three faces. One was Roger Staubach, the other was Harvey Martin. And that didn't surprise me because I knew those guys would be there and I knew they were my teammates, and Harvey, of course, was my best friend. But the other face I saw was Coach Landry, and that did surprise me because I didn't know he was like that. I didn't know he had that type of compassion. And so I found out later after I'd been sedated and trying to go through operations and everything, after my family got back to Dallas, that he was the one most instrumental in consoling and comforting them. And that told me that he's a lot more to Tom Landry than the football coach and the person we see standing on the sideline with the stoic face. And the way I like to sum up my career in the NFL, everybody says, Drew, you should be in a Ring of Honor or this or that. That's okay. What signifies my career, and I've said this before, what signifies my career is the fact that I played 11 seasons for Tom Landry. I did it right for 11 seasons, and that makes a difference.
That's powerful. Bob, your fondest memory?
Actually was my first scrimmage